and my presentation was on the economics of disaster in Japan. The disaster I will be talking about is the one named the Triple Disaster on March 11, 2011. My motivation for my project was in my senior year. I'll be spending 2 weeks and 3 days in Japan studying Asian market studies and international business for credit, which is awesome. And when I was 13 years old, as many of us did, like the Japanimation craze swept the Western world, and I got swept up in it, and I've always loved Japanese culture. Okay, the Triple Disaster was the worst disaster recorded in Japan's history. On March 11th, they got struck with a 9.0 magnitude earthquake on the northeastern border of their country. They also were rocked with 100-foot tall tsunami waves. And in the tsunami waves crashing into Japan, their Fukushima nuclear power plant was overheated and radiation leaked out into the country. This on the INS scale, which is the International Nuclear Event Scale, was a 7, 10 being catastrophic, like worldwide disaster. So this was a pretty big deal for the country. The effects of the Triple Disaster were classified into 4 ways. First, it destroyed over 138,000 buildings, which are actually more buildings than what happened in Hurricane Katrina. It cost an estimated $360 billion in economic funds. That number to this day continues to rise. Second, Japan's nuclear industry was crippled. Japan generates energy by nuclear energy by over 40%. So 11 of Japan's 50 nuclear reactors were immediately closed, causing them to import more oil, causing them to have a bigger national debt. Third, Japan's economy was just starting to recover from 20 years of depression, kind of like worse than what we had of the Great Depression in American history. It seemed to be on the mend when the GDP went up by 3%, but then it got smacked by the Triple Disaster. And then fourth, the Bank of Japan provided market liquidity to ensure the economy to grow. Rebuilding the economy, kind of like what happened in the Great Depression, we poured money into the economy hoping to lift the economy, but actually the adverse happened and it just hurt the economy even more. How is Japan doing as of 2016? Not great, but a little bit better. Like I said, the World Bank has estimated that its debt will increase by $100 to $235 billion. That's on top of the $380 billion that was already estimated. In 2012, Shinzo Abe was elected as a prime minister, offering a 3-arrow system. The first arrow being looser trade regulations to boost the economy, more women in the workplace, and raising the minimum wage of the working population because we want to put more money into the economy and put more trust back into Japan. Keep saying that. The Japanese economy progress is very, very slow, as I said. From 2011 to 2016, it's only grown 1.5% since then, but still some is better than none. Don't read all this, I promise. In conclusion, I learned that the economics of this particular disaster in Japan was a higher inflation rate, a dangerously flexible monetary policy, and by that I mean Shinzo Abe has pushed and printed so much money into their economy that the yen is really the weakest bill out there in terms of first world countries. But on the upside, a decrease in unemployment, putting more money back into the hands of the people to give them a little bit of hope. At the cost of record high inflation prices. It is expensive to live in Japan. The example that I use in my paper is that a box of cereal that costs you $3 here will cost you about $14 there of the same brand. A weak bill, the yen, like I said, is one of the weakest bills, an increasing debt that they are in turn trying to pay off. So it's kind of like being on a teeter-totter. As you're trying to get yourself off the ground, you're also putting yourself back on the ground because you're just shoveling more money back into yourself. But I believe the main focus of Abenomics was just trying to gain some trust and put some hope back into the Japanese people. I learned that as a woman, as a foreigner, I will have to participate in the labor market because Japan's aging labor pool is so great. And what I mean by Japan's aging labor pool is that there are more of the older generation living on welfare and benefits than there are of working class people. So there's a big gap between who's working and who's not. I also learned that to be Shinzo Abe right now is not really easy because he promised the Japanese people a brand new economy on a very, very weak bill. So you can have, $100 in yen and $1,000 in American dollars, and what really does that prove to you? Not really much. But as of March in 2016, Japan's GDP per capita is up 3.6%. So they're getting there. And my works cited page. Anyone have any questions?
We'll take 2 questions. We'll get applause at the end. Yeah. And I want to mention that in order that nobody monopolize the session, because the maximum that you could earn is 2 points. That is 2 questions per class. So just so that everybody has a chance to ask the questions. So if you ask the questions, you get points, dude. Only if you question there are some session or some presentation, absolutely there is no questions at all. So if you want to ask a question, raise your hand. Yeah.
How did you come about the opportunity of studying in Japan?
We have a study abroad program here on campus, and instead of, because I'm just gonna be honest with you, I don't have the funds to do it this semester, which will be next summer, so I have to do it the semester after that, but do the international program here, which is awesome.
What was your question again? What was your question?
How to come across the
Oh, yeah.
opportunity to study abroad in Japan.
Yeah.
How do what?
Come across the opportunity to study abroad in Japan.
Oh, have you come across?
Mhm.
Okay, I see.
Yes.
Well, how about economics questions? Yeah.
Why did the Prime Minister want to raise the minimum wage?
It was mostly towards, if you put money back in the hands of the working population, as you know, I said, there's more older generation than there is younger generation. So to put money back into the younger generation, you're pushing more valuable money back into the economy, thus raising the economy out of its recession. So he's thinking that if I keep pushing money onto people, they'll keep spending it even though prices are high, thus raising, getting us out of this recession. Which is, I tried to do that graph, but it wasn't working.
Very good. Thank you very much. And when you finish, do not close the PowerPoint out right away. Leave it for students to ask questions, and sometimes I ask you to go back, and that also shows that you have confidence. You're ready to answer questions. So I have previously in the past students close it off, and it's very hard for them to bring it back up again. So just keep that in mind. Huh? Oh yeah. Those is, you could close it, yeah.
Don't we?
Younger.
Also, people who are presenting today, at the end of the class, please stay back because I would want to give my comments as well. I try not to comment when you're presenting and give students a chance because sometimes I comment too much. Students write it down as a peer review, comment, and so. And if you write any peer review today, I know there are hands out that are handed out. Please do not copy it word for word. The content, you should paraphrase everything. Because then students who have handout will have advantage over students who don't give handout. Okay.
Okay, my name is Nicole Allen, or Ariana Allen, and I'm doing my presentation on the central bank policies of the United States and Japan during the 1970s oil crisis, like we learned about in macroeconomics. First, we need to know what a central bank is. So the central banks are in charge of making monetary policy and regulating the financial market. They came about after a bunch of financial problems that were going on in 1913, and then so they decided that something needed to be done to put policies in place, and they needed to appoint people to make these policies. And the policies they make are made with the intentions of stabilizing the economy, avoiding inflation, and decreasing unemployment. And then the 1970s oil crisis came about because of the Arab how do you pronounce Arab? Is it Arab or Arab? I don't know which one it is.
Okay.
Arab? Okay. The Arab-Israeli war, and what was happening was some of the people who were buying oil from the Arab tribes or people, they were also supporting Israel, and so Arab obviously didn't like that. So they said, well, if you're going to do that, then we're going to stop sending you as much oil, and then we're going to raise the prices. So the oil prices quadrupled, and it became a big expense for people around the world. And the countries that were most noted about the way that they handled their fiscal policies during this time were Japan, U.S., and Germany. And so the U.S. Federal Reserve is the central bank for the U.S. And so during the oil crisis, they blamed the recession that was going on during that on the oil crisis. And they also said, but there's a lot of economists that say that monetary policy of the Federal Reserve is what made the economy worse during that time. And also during that time, President Nixon had implemented a wage push, which had made minimum wage a certain level, and so that put a lot of strain on businesses who were being, taxed because of the higher interest rates. And also Bretton Woods came to an end, and Bretton Woods was an organization that was in charge of international financial relationships. And so the Federal Reserve decided to make an expansionary monetary policy, and it was obviously to expand the money supply like we've learned and to return output to potential output. There was a recessionary gap, and so they decided to lower the interest rates. And here you can see the PAE, as we've done in class. They lowered the interest rates, and when they did that, they thought the consumption and investment would go up, which would increase PAE. But the problem was that the interest rate didn't actually fall like they planned, and so consumer confidence also didn't rise, and investments didn't go up. So the problem was they lowered the interest rates, and so but money supply went up, so it created a huge inflation problem. Also during this time, they said that investment had went down 35%. And here are some graphs. This right here is the interest rate. You can see that it didn't actually go down, it actually went up. And then this is right here, it says consumer sentiment, but it's the consumer confidence, and it was down. So it didn't work out how they had planned. And this is the inflation rate during this time. And Japan, it was actually really interesting to read about Japan. It seemed like that they had decided that they would come up with their own type of policy, but it ended up kind of lining up with what the U.S. believed about policies for returning the economic status from recessionary gap or expansionary gap to potential output. And so they didn't like the use of monetary policy, but there were also problems during this time which actually ended up helping Japan. They had been having problems with high inflation the whole time. And so the inflation at this point before the oil crisis was 20%. And it says that Japan preferred a cost-push view policy, and then Bank of Japan policies chose to attack this recession by using restrictive demand policies. So they wanted all the demand to go down, and then they thought that because the demand went down, the inflation would go down. The restrictive demand policies were implemented to attack rising inflation through the use of higher discount rates to other banks. And what we learned about the discount rates is that when you lower the discount, or when you have higher discount rates, more member banks will buy more, so then it decreases your money supply, which is supposed to help inflation. The Bank of Japan also favored the idea of wage increases during this time, which resulted in 30% nominal wage increase, and a lot of economists say that really is what hurt Japan during that time and made the inflation even worse. But they waited it out, unlike the United States. They said the biggest problem was that Japan waited it out after they made these policies, but the U.S. kind of went back and forth with their policies. And since Japan waited it out, their inflation went down in 1974. They had a contraction in 1974. but they continued to use restrictive policies. It said that they were really scared about taking away the restrictive policies because they'd had so many problems with inflation. They didn't want to go up, so they ended up having problems with deflation now. And then here's the comparison of the two. And you can see that obviously Japan was a lot higher, but it looks like that they handled it better. And then because of the change in the policy so many times right here, you can see it went down and then went up and that was the problem with investors. They didn't want to invest because they didn't know what to plan for. So what policies proved more efficient? I didn't really know which one. I mean, I feel like there were pros and cons to both sides, but the U.S. economy made hasty decisions about the interest rates, and it caused confidence of consumers and investors to go down. The higher money supply with an increased interest rate led to higher inflation and unemployment. The prior economic decisions with Nixon and the international trade agreements were what also probably didn't help the Federal Reserve policies during this time. Japan restricted demand and increased discount rates to fight the economic disruption of the oil crisis. They proved to be patient with their policies, which became their advantage during this time. However, their problems with inflation hindered their ability to make economic decisions as inflation levels fell. This resulted in a future of deflation for Japan. And then this is my references.
Questions? We'll take two. If any. Okay, Nicholas, go ahead.
Was there any major reason why you focused on these countries, or was it just something that you just found?
Japan. The reason I focused on Japan is because whenever I was looking up the oil crisis, I was looking up the people who had chose the best policies during that time, and it was saying that Japan was most noted for their anti-non-monetary or fiscal policies or something like that. So I thought it was interesting. They kind of seem like the type of kid that, like, the kid in the class that kind of does what they want. That's what they kind of made Japan out to be with their economic policies.
Okay.
Why did you feel Japan felt less confident about the use of the monetary policy?
They said that they felt like that the wages would go up or something. They just that they said that there was composite inflation is what they said, and so because of composite inflation, they didn't feel like that monetary policy could help that.
Thank you very much. Let's move on to the next. You will be last, yeah.
I don't know how many
already
people are
assigned
going.
it, right?
Okay,
Because since you came in late, so
I get it.
I already assigned like who goes next. Usually we go by alphabetical order. So students who have a paper today, and who will be presenting on Monday? Okay, so this group 1 and group 2, your paper will be due what day? Okay, that will be the Monday after Thanksgiving. Are you presenting? Monday, okay. So remember that on the day of your paper due date, you have to do 2 submissions. Everybody remember, right? We had a practice earlier in the semester. That is, you have to submit it electronically by 1:25 p.m. And then the hard copies of your paper plus the supporting documents. If you cite 10 articles, you have to show all 10. So typically, you only ask for a minimum, minimum of 2, yeah. You could have 10 if you want to, but if you use some sort of data, you don't have to print out the whole report, only that page where you get the data from. Okay, so be sure you give me complete of everything, because I think the last submission, there were still students who submit partially, like you have the electronic version, you don't have the paper version, or you have the paper version, you don't have the electronic, or you don't have the supporting document. But be sure you do all that. We had already had a practice one time. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, my name's Connor Cornelison, and I'm a freshman here at UNCP, so it's kind of my first time ever doing something like this on a college campus. Alright, and overall, I decided to do the unemployment rates with 4 other countries, which were Egypt, Italy, Brazil, and China, and comparing those to the United States unemployment rate. So the U.S. currently is at a 4.8% to 5%. It's fluctuated in the past couple months, but that's about where it's at as of now. And since 2009, that is a major improvement, and because it was around a 10%, and that's actually where the chart is at right there. You'll see in 2009, late going into 2010, it was at about a 10%. So unemployment was a major issue after World War II due to all of the military spending and the social ideas that we decided to spit out into the world, like with all the posters and everything, and just the military spending really hit us pretty heavily. And the multiple attempts towards the tax cuts and the stimulus spending have been attempted, but they haven't been really successful. It's like part of the problem is we would try to cut the taxes, right? But then as soon as we cut the taxes, other spending just got dysfunctional, and then you had to re-raise the taxes to try to balance it back out. And so for Egypt, the unemployment rate is about a 12.6%. And even though that seems really bad, it was worse in 2014 at a 13.4%. So, but the overall rate is caused by lack of demand for labor, while the labor force is constantly rising. So that's pretty much like, imagine you have a lot of students coming into like a new school, but not as many teachers to teach those students, so the classes were always like too full. And that's kind of what the issue is here, is there's not enough jobs to supply to the people who are looking for the jobs. And Egypt's economy has predicted that the workforce is not slowing down, so it's just going to get worse in the future. As for China, this is really interesting to me because with China having the largest population in the world, their unemployment rate is only at a 4.1%. And this is caused by the booming workforce. Everything that you see nowadays is imported from China, and that they just have so many factory jobs that it's very easy to get people to fill in those positions for them. And what's actually interesting about China to me is, say you're a farmer and you realize that you might want to make a little bit more of an income, so you move into the city. Well, not necessarily move into the city, but you try to find a job within the city, and you don't get that job. You don't technically become unemployed because you're a self-employed farmer. And I think that really helps China's unemployment rate. And so for Brazil stats overall, you see in October 2015 they were at a 8.9 here over on the chart, and then it's now at an 11.8 as of July going into September. It's up to an 11.8%. And as of 2013, it was at a 6.2%, and Brazil's rate is rising due to the poor growth in the economy, with the weak consumption spending and investment, which is essentially just a waste of their money. They'll try to put more money towards imports and exports, and it's not necessarily what's helping their economy whatsoever. So they're just wasting that money when it could be helped towards unemployment. And all the signs of recession have begun in Brazil. Like I said, like just their false spending towards certain economic features, and it's overall they're just wasting the money that they're trying to spend. As far as Italy goes, as of 2016, their unemployment rate is at an 11.8%, and in 2007, it was as low as 5.9%. So they've got that steady rise, which is not good at all. The higher the rate, the worse. And so unproductivity in the labor field and extreme debt are the leading factors for the unemployment rates being as high as they are. So as far as Italy goes, they are the only country ahead of them in national debt is Greece. So in all of the Europe nation, they are the second worst. And so what I've learned is that in the order, China is at a 4.1%, the United States is at a 4.8%, and Brazil and Italy were tied at 11.8%. These are all stats as of 2016, by the way. And Egypt is at 12.6%. So now I've understood like a lot of the past is what really can affect the future of an economy and really show what its unemployment will become. So, as the countries that, like I said, were in World War II, they will be worse off. Or not necessarily not today, but that's what starts it, is when you have an economic disaster that overall just leads to spending that is not helpful for the economy. But factors such as isolation, demand for labor, and workforce will never perfectly coincide, and because of that, the unemployment is not going to be, or the employment is not going to be 100%. So there's always going to be unemployment regardless of how hard. Kind of like that seesaw analogy that was earlier. It's like you try to fix one thing, but something else is always going to be going down. And regardless of the precautions taken to prevent or to solve unemployment, it always weighs the economy down as a negative factor. So regardless of what it is that is trying to be done to help the economy. Like if you were to fix unemployment or attempt to fix unemployment, something else is always going to be an issue. So I think that's the problem with the economy. You know, it's just like you want to try to fix something else, but unemployment is just one of those things that's extremely hard to fix. So if you try to put too much focus into it, it can always sometimes take away the focus of something else. But yeah, that's the end. And here's my sources. So any questions? Yeah, go ahead.
Why did you pick these specific countries?
Honestly, I chose Italy because I really want to go to Italy someday. I just thought it'd be like a cool vacation spot. But I did choose China because of the amount of the population that coincides with the employment. I did think that was a really interesting statistic with it. Just naturally, you know, it's just China's a really interesting country as far as unemployment and employment goes to me. And the other two is just Egypt was because I knew that their economy was struggling right now, and just out of curiosity, I did want to see what the employment to unemployment ratio was. And then for Brazil, it was just happened to be the biggest South American country that came to mind, so I just chose it. I try to vary throughout the continents.
With Egypt, what do you think they're gonna, like, did it have any saying on what they're gonna do, since they said it's just gonna keep getting worse?
Well, I think the article that I read did not say what they needed to do, but overall, it's just for Egypt, I feel that there are more people that are looking for jobs, but don't, with the workforce growing as steadily as it is, I don't think they're putting as much consideration into trying to find more jobs for those people. But I think that's what overall needs to happen. But until they can find where those people are able to work, it's just going to keep getting worse. But also, I did read something that youth, like I guess our generation, you could consider, is growing much faster than they expected. So it's really hard for them to find the jobs that they need.
Okay, thank you very much.
Here's your only copy, right? Okay.
5%, right?
You look at that too.
This is for like.
Okay, my name is McKenna Cook, and I'm doing Black Friday and the effects on our economy. And a little brief history behind Black Friday. It's usually the first Friday after Thanksgiving. It kicks off a lot of like the seasonal shopping, like Christmas shopping and stuff like that. It was coined around the 1960s. I think they said somewhere in like Philadelphia. And the reason they call it Black Friday is because actually when they used to keep records by hand, the red ink would mean like they had a loss or something like that, and the black ink would mean profit. And so Black Friday is like termed, or a coined term for like profit. Like they're changing over from loss to profit. Okay, and the reason I chose this, I think a lot of people don't know what happens, like what goes on during, Black Friday, like the more in-depth stuff. So I was talking about like business savings, the tax, and the cost and benefit. I feel like you need to educate yourself, like when you're going shopping, know what you're spending your money on, and where that money is actually going. But what was I saying? Okay, business savings. Like I said earlier, Black Friday is the time of the year where businesses go from being in the red, so like a state of loss, to being in the black, so a profit. And contrary to popular belief, a lot of businesses during Black Friday are actually making a bunch of money, even though you see like all these discounted prices and all this stuff. But what is really happening when businesses during Black Friday, I can't speak right now, I'm sorry, they're like trying to like get rid of like items and stuff like that they're at the end of their lifespan, and so like hence the drastic discounts. And last year, a total of $9.1 billion was spent on Black Friday. And tax, it's a common misconception that taxes aren't used. I know a lot of people that don't think they actually tax you during Black Friday and stuff like that. But the state and the local government, they do impose a tax on sales within their authority, so like you're always getting taxed. And so from a tax standpoint, there's no extra benefit during Black Friday. The costs and benefits during Black Friday, I said the cost would be like long hours of the business. They spend more money to stay open, and then also like lost, broken, and stolen items take a toll on profits, people freaking out, you know. And also the benefits, okay, so they actually earn quite a bit of money. It's one of the biggest spending days for customers and consumers and stuff like that. And it helps to get rid of products at the end of their lifespan. And then for the consumer, the cost would be like money used to buy the products and all that stuff. And the benefits would be like to receive products at a discounted rate. To get shopping out of the way, like the Christmas stuff, and it's a morale boost because they just got a bunch of stuff. And so my conclusion, I think overall, like the economists say that Black Friday is actually good for our economy. It boosts a bunch of stuff. It gets the flow of money going, and along with the people getting what they want, it actually helps our economy boost it. Yeah. And then questions. I got my side sources. Yeah.
Do you know if they do Black Friday in any other countries?
I'm not sure. I think they do like in Europe, but I'm not 100% sure. I think it's an American thing mostly. But
Why'd you choose Black Friday as your topic?
I just chose Black Friday because it's close to Thanksgiving. I think it's like a good topic to talk about in economics.
Who was the one who asked question? Jared? You did, and then who was the other person? Oh, Sean? Okay. All right, thank you.
Oh, did you want to?
No.
No? Okay.
Ready? Okay. Hi, I'm Bree, and I did mine on unemployment and its causes. My motivation behind this was being a college student as well as entering the work field. I feel like it's pertinent to know what's going on in your country in the work field. Unemployment entails that the person did not work during the preceding week, but made an attempt to find work within the past 4 weeks. And I chose to compare the United States with 4 other countries, being Russia, Brazil, France, and Egypt. And I found that all of these countries had in common that their high unemployment was caused by inelasticity in labor market and wage growth. And this is a list of the unemployment rates. Okay, the United States at a rate of 4.9% is caused because fewer adults are working and the wage growth. Only 62.7% of adult Americans are working, and the labor force participation rate hasn't been this low since the late 1970s, and it was this low in the 70s because women weren't allowed to work outside of the house. The rate measures how many people over age 16 are working or actively seeking. Growth is anemic in the United States, and the median income is about the same today as it was 20 years ago once you adjust for inflation. Russia's unemployment rate is at 6.5%, and it was caused by the financial crisis in 2008-2009, where the government moved to reduce the public infrastructure projects and construction. The largest companies reduced their investment programs, and some companies even carry out staff reductions. Banks have raised interest rates for loans and scaling down mortgage programs. This is from an article that I've read. Although Russia's unemployment rate remains one of the lowest in the world, a growing number of companies are placing employees on an unpaid leave of absence or forcing them to leave work fewer hours. Brazil's unemployment rate is at 10.2%, and this is also caused by the labor market. The very high costs associated with hiring and firing in Brazil make employers reluctant to fire workers if they think they may have to rehire sometime soon. For an example, if a worker is laid off for operational reasons, which is any reason other than just cause, they receive a string of payments, including notice of 30 to 90 days and a deposit into their unemployment, which is equal to about 2/5 of the month's pay for a year, which understandably employers tend to fire their more recent because they have to pay them less, kind of thing. France unemployment rate is at 10.5%, and the labor market is a huge cause in this unemployment rate. Non-wage costs are very high, making people expensive to hire. Firing people is difficult, like how it was for the last country. Even in economic boom times, France's structural employment has remained relatively high. Egypt's unemployment rate is at 12.7%, and the labor force has grown at a faster rate than the demand for labor, and this trend is likely to continue for years to come, kind of like how they said. Convergence of decline in revenues, expanding shortages, and devaluating currency, unemployment has risen, as well as wages, which is a huge cause of the unemployment. Wage determination is basically left to individual companies, regardless of or any sense of social justice. This is also, I'll read that one. In conclusion, when comparing the U.S. with the 4 other countries, during 2009-2014, the likely causes of the unemployment rates are caused by labor market regularities as well as wages. Yes.
In Brazil, I think you said something about when they're laid off or partly laid off, they still receive benefits.
Mm-hmm.
How long does that last?
That's a good question.
You can find out and then just
Let 'em know.
be sure you mention that in the paper. Yeah.
Okay.
Can you find out?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Good question.
Oh,
That was-
Go ahead.
Oh, thank you. Out of all the other countries besides the United States, which one did you find the most interesting on when you were doing your research?
I kind of found the one in Brazil about how like they still got paid even though they got laid off, and it was by like when they got hired. So it was like whoever was newly hired, they would probably get fired earlier because they would spend more money on them, kind of thing. So I found Brazil interesting than U.S.
Was there another question back there? Did you
Oh.
want to ask a question?
Just how do you think women affect the labor market in all these?
What was the question? I missed
How do
it.
women?
Oh, on the women, okay. Can you restate your question one more time?
How do women affect the labor market? Like, this is a positive and a negative. Like,
I don't think she'd look at the women.
Yeah.
I think she'd look at the overall.
Just the countries, kind of general.
Do you think it would improve it?
Women, like women and men, like it wouldn't really be a difference between us.
Okay, I have a general comment that will help people in representing in the future. That is, if you use a graph, you will have to cite your sources. Anytime that you use a number in you have to state what year you get the number from. Because anytime you use the figures, it's important to your event and the sources. So you should have citation within the text as well as, not just in the reference, but within the text as well. How many pages did I mention? The paper was
45?
45, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, very good. So if you finish writing your peer review, please put it up there. Don't give it to me so I won't get confused. I need to talk to everybody who represented today, in order